In August 1989, a brutal murder shocked the glamorous Beverly Hills neighborhood. Home to numerous celebrities, that night Jose and Kitty Menendez were riddled with more than 15 gunshots while resting in their home. The most chilling aspect of this case is that those responsible for the crime were their own sons, Erik, 18 years old, and Lyle Menéndez, 21 years old. Finally, unable to bear the burden of guilt any longer, Erik confessed the murders to his psychiatrist, Dr. Jerome Oziel. Despite the confidentiality that exists between doctor and patient, Dr. Oziel found himself in a complicated situation. When Lyle, the older brother, learned of Erik's confession, in a desperate attempt to protect himself, Lyle threatened to kill the psychiatrist if he revealed what had happened to the authorities. Jerome, his psychologist, decided to share this information with his lover, believing that he might be in danger. As a result, he lost his psychologist's license, as he was accused of violating doctor-patient confidentiality and having inappropriate relationships with female patients. This is the second installment of the successful anthology series, Monster, created by Ryan Murphy, whose first series, Dahmer, had great success on Netflix. This time it delves into the life of the Menendez brothers, who were convicted of the murder of their parents in 1996, focusing especially on their motivations behind the crime. Thanks to the series, the case moved the world once again, recalling that, more than 3 decades ago, the Menendez brothers were sentenced to life imprisonment in what many consider an unjust sentence. Today, with the emergence of compelling new evidence, the world is again looking at the case in a different light, and their family is pleading for the prosecutor to consider the sentence. This case has captured the public's attention for decades, not only because of the brutality of the crimes, but also because of the psychological, familial, and legal complexities that emerged throughout the trial. One of the most complex in U.S. criminal history, it has maintained its relevance because of the depth of the issues it addressed. Jose Enrique Menendez was born in Cuba in 1944 and emigrated to the United States after the Cuban Revolution, settling in New York, where his outstanding academic performance earned him a scholarship to the University of the South. He quickly rose through the entertainment industry, working for companies such as RCA. Jose was known for his ambition and for being extremely controlling and demanding, both in his professional and personal life, exerting significant control over family life with rigid expectations. Kitty, his wife, came from a middle-class family. They met in college and quickly fell in love and eventually married in 1963. Kitty left her career as a teacher to devote herself to the family, but suffered from bouts of depression and alcohol problems, which affected her relationship with her children and her ability to cope with Jose's domineering personality. Although she exercised the role of mother, Kitty was emotionally distant and dependent on her husband, which placed her in a vulnerable position in the family dynamic, contributing to a tense and dysfunctional environment. The sons, Lyle and Erik Menendez, from an early age were under strict discipline imposed by their father, who expected them to excel in both academics and sports. Lyle attended Princeton University, while Erik shined as a junior tennis player. However, the constant pressure to live up to their father's high expectations, coupled with the dysfunctionality of the home, created a problematic environment for the brothers. The Menendezes had exhibited behaviors that their parents could not tolerate. On one occasion, they had stolen more than $100,000 worth of property from neighboring mansions in the neighborhood where they previously lived. This caused great embarrassment to his father, who, upon discovery, decided to move in with the family. Before doing so, Jose Menendez took it upon himself to hand out checks to the affected neighbors, accompanied by a formal apology from Lyle and Erik. What Jose and Kitty didn't realize was that the move would not change the tragic fate that awaited them. Despite having raised their children in an environment of luxury, exotic travel, and million-dollar gifts, the dysfunctional environment in which they had grown up as children was already deeply ingrained. That image of the perfect family, full of respect, prestige, and a high standard of living, would vanish completely that night. But the darkest secret was yet to be revealed. For the siblings, the environment in which they grew up had fostered a relationship fraught with fear and resentment toward their parents. During the trial, which we will explore below, Lyle and Erik Menendez claimed to have been victims of physical, emotional, and sexual abuse by their father, Jose. Although these allegations were never corroborated by outside evidence at the time, they were the centerpiece of their defense. The argument presented argued that the years of abuse had left the brothers with a deep terror towards their father and rejection of their mother, which drove them to commit the murders in a state of extreme desperation. This version of events was supported by testimony from psychologists who suggested that both may have developed post-traumatic stress disorder due to the prolonged abuse. In 1993, the trial ended with 2 deadlocked juries. Although the brothers were tried together, each had a separate jury and did not reach a verdict and was deemed void. Finally, on July 2, 1996, Judge Weisberg sentenced Lyle and Erik Menendez to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Both were sentenced as maximum security prisoners, and both brothers were sent to different prisons on September 10, 1996, a fact that plunged them into sadness when they learned that they would be separated. In this second instance, the shocking and heartbreaking testimonies of abuse presented by the brothers were not considered. The verdict focused only on the acts that led to the tragic death of their parents, without taking into account the child abuse to which they claimed to have been subjected, or the psychological disorders that, according to their defense, would have driven them to commit the crime. During the course of the investigation, a script that Erik Menendez had written together with a friend before the murders was discovered, in which they found similarities with the events of that tragic night. Erik wrote a 66-page script titled Friends, which was unrelated to the popular television series. According to Craig Signorel, his friend and classmate who collaborated with Erik in the writing, the story was about an attractive and sophisticated young man named Hamilton Crowell, who in the opening scene kills his parents in order to inherit their fortune. Although this script was not introduced as evidence at trial, many pointed out the parallels between the narrative and the crimes. What continues to be debated is whether the Menendez brothers' motivation aligned with that of Hamilton Crowell, as the prosecution claimed. In any case, the script was never produced or considered. Behind bars, the Menendez brothers have celebrated marriages. Although no conjugal visits are allowed, they remain married to their respective wives today. While some see this as a romantic gesture, others can't help but find it at least somewhat disturbing, as their relationships have never been physical. In 2018, after 2 decades, the brothers were reunited in the same prison. Lyle Menendez, 50 at the time, was transferred from Mule Creek State Prison in Northern California to San Diego Correctional Facility, where Erik, 47, was held. For years, they were able to communicate only through letters with no way to talk or telephone. Lyle recalls it was a very emotional moment, and they gave each other an endless hug, although it also reminded them of how much time they had lost together. New evidence has recently emerged that strengthens the accusation that the Menendez brothers suffered abuse at the hands of their father. One such piece of evidence is a recently found letter that Erik wrote to his cousin Andy Kano, now deceased, in December 1988. This evidence is crucial, which would make the case take an unexpected turn. But the story does not end here. Erik and Lyle were not the only ones who suffered abuse by Jose Enrique Menendez. In May 2023, accusations came to light from singer Roy Rosello, a former member of the Puerto Rican band Menudo, who claims he had an encounter with Jose Menendez while working for RCA. After drinking a glass of wine at Menendez's house, Roy claims he lost control of his body and was abused. This incident, according to the singer, occurred in the 1980s, although Roy did not speak publicly about it until 2023. The allegations have further intensified the campaign to reopen the case. The next court hearing will be scheduled for November 26th of this year. Ultimately, it will be up to the judge to decide whether the convictions should be overturned. If so, then the prosecution will decide whether to retry the case. In the meantime, the Menendez brothers are anxiously awaiting the possibility of regaining their freedom. If you like the case, don't forget to like it and turn on the little bell so you don't miss any other story. See you next case.